All right, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. This is actually our last of our grad chat series sessions for our graduate business programs at RIT Saunders College of Business. My name is Matt Cornwell. I work in the student services office here, so I support our graduate recruitment efforts. And tonight I'm joined by Dr. Rich DeJordy, who will be giving you all an understanding of the Master of Science program in Organizational Leadership and Innovation. Rich is also the program director and department chair for management. Um, so before we jump in, just some brief logistical pieces. If you have any questions, please feel free to use the chat feature here down at the bottom of the screen or unmute yourself. We're happy to address any questions that you all have. And then if you do need captioning, you can certainly add that here as well. But yeah, without further ado, I'll turn it over to Rich and we'll get started.
Thank you, Matt. So, as Matt said, my name is Rich DeJordy. I'm the department chair for the Department of Management, which houses actually three graduate programs: a global supply chain management program, technology innovation management and entrepreneurship program, and then this one, the Masters of Science in Organizational Leadership and Innovation. This program has evolved over time. It used to be, it's sort of a combination of a previous service leadership and human resource program merged together, and is designed presently to be an online program. Although we are thinking about offering it either both in person and online, or switching into in person over time. So I'm curious about that. If you want to chat about that at some point during tonight, the online part of it is making it more appealing or less appealing, because we've been getting some feedback in that direction. I'm going to share my screen because I have a little slide deck to help with this. So let me find my share button here. There it is. And this should be the right one. Hopefully you can see a slide deck now, which has hopefully useful information. So come on, there we go. So just introductions, we sort of already did that. If you would like to introduce yourself, please unmute yourself or raise your hand, and we can do all that. But I'm not going to force everybody to introduce themselves. I wouldn't want to be forced, so I don't do that to other people. But you're certainly welcome to. So let me know if you want. Then a little introduction to the Saunders College of Business. We'll talk about the OLI program, and then the rest of the time will be for questions and answers. So RIT, we are the Saunders College of Business inside the Rochester Institute of Technology. We have just gone through a strategic planning process. We're in the midst of a strategic planning process. So we've updated our mission and our vision recently. They're up here. I'm not going to read them. If you're interested in them, you can look at the video and whatever. But the idea is that Saunders College of Business is here, situated in the Rochester Institute of Technology, and there's two very big advantages to that. One is, because we are at an institution of technology, we really have access into that intersection of business and technology. And sometimes people think that technology companies are like Google and Apple, and yes, they are technology companies. But nowadays, given the nature of business, all businesses are technology companies. Wegman is a technology business. Consolidated is a Constellation Brands is a technology business, because technology is so infused into doing anything in the business world these days, that we really have that intersection, and we have a unique offering in that perspective. And then, obviously our vision is to be, affecting business in a meaningful way in the future by, creating, instilling, and empowering business leaders. So that's it. Gave you plenty of time to read those if you wanted to. So what should I tell you about Saunders? It may be more than you want to know, but I'll tell you anyway. We are AACSB accredited. That's the highest level of accreditation for business schools there is in the world. Only about 5%, I think it's actually up to 6% now, of business schools hold this accreditation. What that means is every 5 years, and we're going through it right now, this organization sends external agents in to look at what we do and our results, how are our students faring, how are our curriculum being updated, how current are we, all that sort of stuff, to make sure that we're um, delivering on the promise of what a business education means. Um, the the school had one of the first female business school dean in the United States in 1960. That is not our current female dean. We do have a female dean, but she was not already dean in 1960. Um, but it was founded way back in 1952, but there was a naming gift in 2006 from Philip Saunders. And if you're from the Rochester area, you probably know his name. He's sort of something of a serial entrepreneur in the area. He started with a gas station and built, incredible businesses, and then took over businesses and saved them, the businesses that were going to go under and stuff like that. So he's a serial entrepreneur. He's got a incredible sort of philosophy about the role of education in promoting a community, and he really loves the Rochester community, and so he's invested here, and we're incredibly grateful for that. One of the other benefits I said about one of the benefits is this sort of intersection of business and technology. But one of the other benefits is that we have a large institution. RIT is a large institution, but the Saunders College of Business is actually relatively small. We have about 700 undergraduate students and about 300 graduate students, which is about half and half international, maybe a little more now international. So you get that sort of small college feel because we as a college, the Saunders College of Business, are small. And so faculty know students' names and they get to know them. And we have, this cohort type experience for our undergraduates. And there's lots of that sort of one-on-one time and, real personal investment, especially at the graduate programs. But we have the resources of a large institution because we're part of a larger institution. So that really is a sort of the best of both worlds in many ways. We do recruit students at the graduate level across all parts of the globe. And we've been very fortunate that our graduates find themselves successful enough that they can give back. So we have a very large philanthropic base of alumni in particular, not just them. Phil Saunders is not an alum, but we do also have a lot of alumni that are over 25,000 who are very generous and who actually funded this new expansion, which we'll talk about a little bit later. We always like to show off how good we are. And so, we're rated in the top 100 schools in U.S. News and World Reports this coming ranking, the new rankings. We have a bunch of rankings at both the graduate and undergraduate level. The MBA and executive MBA, we have incredible rankings in terms of that. We actually just won an award for our executive MBA in the life sciences program that we put together specifically. So there's a ton of, these sorts of things. I have mixed opinions about rankings. I think that they can do as much harm as good. But as you can see, just from the amount of stuff here, there's a lot of consistency here. And that's telling that we do the things we do for the students. And it's nice that they get recognized in these rankings, right? Chasing rankings is not something we do and not something that we really want to, I think that's bad. But this is more of a sort of post hoc recognition of the things we are doing. And you can see, I'm not going to go through them all, but there's plenty of areas where we have really, really good, strong rankings. Okay, and I see we have more people coming in. That's great. And just to reiterate, if you have questions along the way, just unmute yourself and interrupt me or raise your hand on Zoom or whatever. Use the chat function, whatever, and we will be. I'm perfectly happy to not hear just my voice for a while. So please, by all means, feel free to pipe in whenever. Okay, so what do we have for graduate portfolio? We have an MBA. We have a traditional MBA, although because again, we're at an Institute of Technology, our MBA program is STEM designated, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics designated. We also offer an accelerated +1 MBA program. So you can come here as an undergrad or even go to some other schools that we have articulation agreements with, get your undergraduate degree, and then come in and in an accelerated fashion, also get an MBA. We offer full and part-time offers. We also have an executive MBA program that is very well ranked. But then, because again, we're an Institute of Technology, we have a lot of these Masters of Science programs. And so pretty much every department has at least two. Well, I shouldn't say that, one or two. And most of them are STEM designated. This one, the Organizational Leadership and Innovation program, actually is not. And that's designed that way on purpose to allow more flexibility into the program. So let's talk a little bit more about that. Oh, wait, I have something out of order here. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that, then I'll throw it back to Matt to talk about scholarship opportunities because he knows a lot more about that stuff than I do. So the Leadership and Innovation program is really sort of out of a service innovation and leadership program and an HR course. So there's a little bit of I don't know what, I hate the term soft skills, but there's a lot of focus on your ability to interact with others to achieve ends through an organization. So one of the courses we're really proud of, and that's why it's a little bit bigger, is called Technology in the Future of Work. As you probably know, there's a lot of changes going on in the nature of work. Some of it started with COVID, but the acceleration of large language models and various forms of generative AI are really sort of changing the nature of how we look at where do we actually add the value. It's not a threat to work, it's an opportunity to look at it a new way and to redirect our efforts into where we add the value. So that's Technology in the Future of Work is one of the required courses. Leading change, leading teams and organizations, that's sort of the, how do you be a leader? Because leadership and management are slightly different, but even not, before I became an academic, I was an IT guy. So I had been a bits and bytes programmer, mucking around in the Unix kernel. And I eventually went up to be a vice president of information technology, right? But I like to think I did okay, but not always the best people who do the lower level stuff are good or trained at doing the higher level stuff of the human side of management. So leading teams and organizations required, and then strategic foresight and innovation. Again, we have a large focus on innovation here. And so understanding how to, I don't want to say predict the future, but read what might be coming in the future and prepare for it and be innovative in the right directions. Then you get to take 6 electives. And I'm not going to go through all the ones that are listed here, but there's a lot of different ones that are, HR focused, service focused, innovation focused, corporate social responsibility and governance focused. There's lots of different things. But one of the beautiful things about this program, and one of the reasons why it's not STEM designated, is that we give you lots of opportunity to sort of customize what you want to get out of the program through your electives. So I'm the program director as well as being department chair. I can approve something. You sit down and we talk, or we Zoom and we talk, and you say, well, what I'm really interested in is XYZ. Does that fit within the broad category of organizational leadership and innovation? That's the first question. As long as it does, we can be really creative about how we, integrate stuff. So maybe you're really interested in sort of digital communications in leadership or something of that nature. We can find, the university offers a lot of courses. These courses don't all have to be in the management department or even in the Saunders College of Business. We can sort of mix and match to create something that's specific for your sort of career goals, your sort of aspirations. So you can do any of these are perfectly acceptable right away. You can just take those and be done. But if you want to do something different, always ask. It's not a guaranteed yes. If you wanted to take, I don't know, basketball, I might have a hard time finding a reason why basketball fits into organizational leadership and innovation. But, we could still at least have a conversation about it. So that's sort of the structure of the program. Now I'm going to go back to the scholarship thing and let Matt talk about that because he knows, as I said, more about it than I do.
Yeah, so, and actually I should have updated this, but given that we're thinking about going maybe from online to on campus. Some of this will still be relevant. So the first thing is the fully online program currently has a significant tuition discount of 43%. So scholarships are not applicable to the fully online program. So I want to be upfront about that. So these awards are specific for on-campus programs that aren't fully offered online. Now, to the point of maybe considering the program becoming on campus, these awards would then apply based on the program going to that capacity. So generally speaking, for the on-campus programs, we award merit scholarships anywhere from 20 to 50% of tuition. If you are a New York State resident or graduated from a New York State college or university, regardless of, if it was a while ago, you're in the workforce now, and you attended a school a while back, that's fine. This would still apply. Your minimum scholarship award would start at 30%. So I think the big thing here is just making aware that the scholarships are available for the on-campus programs. And then the online versions, again, the fully online versions have that 43% tuition discount. So be aware of that, be mindful of it. But yeah, feel free to reach out with any questions you may have on the scholarship component or the discounts, I should say, as well.
And thank you for reminding me. I think I said this before. Everybody that's now here was here. We are thinking about this right now is focused as an online program, but we are thinking about maybe offering an in-person version in parallel or in place of the online program. So I'm curious about any thoughts you have about that. If you have them to just sort of share now, or we can talk about them at the end if you have any, and if you don't, that's also perfectly fine. Okay, so 95% outcome rates. This is across our graduate programs. We have this program right now, the OLI program, because it's online, as you can imagine. Online programs are really designed to serve working professionals in many ways. So most of our, maybe even all of our students in the OLI program have full-time employment. And so it's 100% outcome rate if you want to talk about it that way, because no one has lost their job because they took this program, as far as I know. So, but across all our programs, and I think this is an important statistic, we have a really good outcome rate. We really do a lot to place our students, but also we have a really good reputation. One of the things about RIT as an institution broadly is that we have a very hands-on applied sort of focus in how we do things. It's maybe a little less clear in online programs than it is in person programs, where you do like projects for, companies come in and give you a project. But we are very much focused on the practical applications of what our degrees are for. And so in addition to that, so we have a co-op program. Co-op, again, not really a good fit with online programs, right? But we have one of the oldest and best cooperative education programs in the world. I would put them up against pretty much anyone. Maybe Northeastern is above us, but other than that, we place a lot of students in co-op. We have an office that helps make sure co-op assignments go well. We have a lot of companies that want to do co-ops with us because they love our students. And that applies at both the grad and the undergrad level. It's required at the undergrad level. But it's usually an option, again, not necessarily online, but for the on-campus programs, there are options to work in a co-op environment. We also have major sort of job fairs here on campus, and really do a lot to help build that outcome rate, that student outcome rate. And that's why we have that's such a big number of alumni that are also successful and willing to give us money. Here's just a couple of our sort of business industry partnerships. Out there we have all sorts of, if you look at this list of companies, they're very impressive. Some local, some national. We do co-ops with almost all. I think we do co-ops with all of these. We have placed people at almost all of these. Many of these connections, many of the co-op opportunities come from alumni who get into a position of, senior rank at some of these organizations and say, okay, well, we're going to go out to RIT to get co-ops and interns, because they're going to know what they're doing. They're going to be, ready to do something real as part of their co-op or internship. We do have entrepreneurship opportunities. I will be very honest with you. There is some change going on here. So the first thing that's listed here is the Simone Center for Student Innovation and Entrepreneurship. There's actually a push to sort of create two different entities. One that's going to be really about venture, new ventures, helping students that have advanced ideas who want to really build this gigantic new company, connect with the venture capital community, all that sort of stuff. And that's where the Simone Center is going to be. But the Saunders College of Business is committed to the idea of entrepreneurial mindset and entrepreneurship and doing all these things that give you as a student a place to test out, how do I feel about entrepreneurship? How do I feel about this idea? Can I do it? And importantly, and this is the difference, is importantly give mostly undergraduate students a chance to go out and try something and fail, because it's sort of cliche, but it's also very true that you learn as much, if not more, from failing at something than you do from actually completing it. So that's so we're going to make sure that that's still going on, even if it's not in the context of what is labeled the Simone Center. But we do have the Venture Creations Incubator. That should be more on the other side. But the local Saunders Consulting, co-ops and internships, I'm going to be teaching a negotiations class next semester, right? We do We Are World projects. So negotiations, a lot of exercises, but I have 2 local businesses that are looking to do something strategic. My students are going to be able to choose a project and say, okay, I'm going to do research for you. I'm going to do this. The company, they get something out of it, but the students get this real life experience of like, okay, if I wanted to I have a virtual company and I want to open a physical site, where should I open it? Why should I go there? What connections can I use to negotiate a better deal? All that sort of stuff. They're going to do that. And then we have the construct. This is sort of the rapid prototyping space where you can really do, makerspace to do, rapid prototyping and do 3D printing so that you can get a proof of concept earlier and faster. So there are a lot of entrepreneurships on campus, opportunities on campus. In many ways, though, I want to sort of, again, the Simone Center is changing, but we're really more about innovation, I would say, than entrepreneurship per se, which is why the program is Organizational Leadership and Innovation. A lot of entrepreneurship actually happens inside or bigger organizations. Call it corporate entrepreneurship. Some people call it intrapreneurship, but it's really about innovating to keep current, innovating to stay competitive. And that's a lot of what we focus on in this program. Okay, excellence. Well, of course, we think we're excellent, but we have really focused on expanding. We just expanded the building. If you're looking at this picture, the right-hand side of this picture, at least as I look at it, I'm not sure what Zoom does with it, but the right-hand side is all a new expansion. We basically doubled the size of the business school, but square footage with this expansion, which as I said before, was primarily funded by really successful alumni. And what we've tried to do is enhance our interdisciplinary collaborations, right? Working through those entrepreneurship opportunities, working through venture creation labs, student accelerators, elevate applied education and research. So there's been a big push to bring in more research because research is the fuel of education, and expand our community engagement in Rochester beyond. So part of this expansion at the very top of the new expansion is an event space where we've had events with, we got even more people coming in. We have events where we bring in people. We have a very strong association because in the management department with the local chapter of the Association of Supply Chain Management, right? It's a professional organization that people belong to, and we're working with them to host at least one meeting a semester in that event space so that, they come here and our students can just walk over to the building and attend the meeting with them. So that's really important to us. There's a lot of team rooms that students can sign up and reserve themselves to do group work for projects, but also to do group works, interdisciplinary projects. And so we have a lot of these sort of new opportunities because of the generosity of our alumni and this new expansion. So that's sort of my spiel, and you're probably sick of my voice by now. So I will again turn it over to Matt, hopefully with the right slide this time, so that he can talk a little bit about application requirements, and then we can just open it up for Q&A.
Thanks, Rich. Appreciate it. All right, so the application process is fairly straightforward. You can apply right online at ret.edu/apply. Obviously, you do need a baccalaureate degree. For this particular program, again, as Rich alluded to, we generally are looking at students that have work experience. So generally speaking, that's part of the puzzle here, but not necessarily a requirement. It can be case by case. But just be mindful that if you are in progress with a baccalaureate degree, you can still apply. You just have to be done before you start the program. Many of our programs do have a preference for students having some knowledge of algebra and statistics. I think it helps contextualize some of the analytics coursework you might have the opportunity to do or things like that. So be mindful of that. And if you don't have that, that's okay. We can work with you through that. We have some coursework that we could assign to get you, up to where you need to be. For international students, if you do have transcripts that are not in English, please keep that in mind. But all transcripts should be official. We only require the GMAT or GRE for international students. So if you have a degree from the US already and are an international student, then it is also waived, but be mindful of that as well. We do ask for personal statements, current resume, and then again, for international students that have not studied in the US previously, we require the TOEFL or IELTS. We do not require letters of recommendation. So be mindful of that as well, not something we're looking for. And then with the personal statement, at least we really want you to focus on you, right? We want you to market yourself. We want you to be authentic in that. So we don't want to see things from ChatGPT. We don't want to see that type of stuff. It's personal. It's a call to personal statement for a reason. So be mindful of that as well, as that's a factor and variable that we will consider. And it does not need to be extensive. 400 words, I think, is our max. So yeah, so that's a really kind of high level synopsis of the application process. And this generally applies across all of our programs. The process is pretty standardized across the business programs that we have.
Yeah, and I'll just add, the personal statement is an opportunity for you to connect your application to why you care for this degree here at RIT. Like, make it you're selling yourself to this program, to us, and we read those very much so when we are doing when we're doing admissions. Okay, so I think that's basically it. Here's the next steps. Basically, go to the website that Matt mentioned and apply. If you have any questions at all, send it to this gradbiz at saunders.rit.edu. Right? It is it's a generic email that you'll get the fastest response if you use that. But feel free, you can look us up, Matt and myself, up on the website, and you can if you have a pointed question you want to ask one of us specifically, and you don't do it right now, you can send an email directly to us. I'm going to stop sharing the screen and open it up. If you have questions, you can unmute, you can put them in the chat, and ask. And if you don't have questions, we don't have to, but happy to use this opportunity to
I have a question. This is T. Simmons. One can apply at any given time. Is that correct?
Yeah, so that's a good question, T. We did not cover that. The program itself is a fall only start, so it is a fall, endeavor. We do accept applications on a rolling basis, so you can apply really at any point. Ideally, if you're looking at fall, you want to apply sometime in mid-spring. So like February, March is kind of a good time frame to apply. but again, that's not a hard requirement. But it kind of just sets you up to be in a good spot once you start the program, have time to prepare for everything and whatnot. So, but yeah, the program is a fall only start, but target February, March, but we do take applications on a rolling basis.
And I'll just add that if you apply before February, March, we probably won't be looking at them. We'll try to acknowledge that we received it, but won't actually be looking at it and making decisions until at least that time frame. Just because, again, like I said, we're looking at possibly, some modifications to the program. We want to see what's going on with those as we make our decisions.
Okay, another quick follow-up question. What would you say your acceptance rate is?
That's an
Yeah, yeah.
question.
So I would say, it's variable from year to year, but 60 to 70%. And it depends on the program. So it can vary from program to program as well. For this one, I would argue it's probably higher because of the audience we're catering to. And a lot of folks that are applying understand that. So the work experience factor certainly plays a role. But somewhere around 60 to 70% is kind of the ballpark that would apply. Yeah.
Okay, what about for alumni? Does that hold any weight?
I mean, it certainly helps. I think, we know the rigor of our programs and things like that. So that can play a factor. And it probably is a little bit higher for alumni as well. But yeah, so we would certainly factor that in as well.
Yeah, I mean, if you're coming in, if you're applying to this and you had previously gotten a bachelor's from the Saunders College, then we know that you have a baseline that we can be comfortable with. And that's important to us, right? We want to be able to keep the programs and the courses challenging, and rewarding. Like we want you to be learning new stuff. And so it's important us to have a sort of a level of, I don't know what you want to call it, academic acumen that we can teach to, so that we're delivering on the promise of, like, you're even though this, especially in the online version, is discounted, money, it's still a lot of money. We want to make sure that you're getting value for it, so that would help.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, because I hold a STEM degree from there, so I just kind of want to make sure that everything was cool. How do you guys have you guys institute like a DBA versus PhD type of program, or how do you guys doing it?
Yeah, we do. We have actually just started a PhD program 2 years ago, and we have 3 tracks in it. One of which is very much aligned with organizational leadership and innovation. It's in the strategy technology innovate. I think we're calling it strategy technology innovation management. And we are accepting applications for that program right now as well. And that's a completely different beast, right? So
Yeah.
the OI program is sort of, I'm a working professional, I'm going to stay a working professional, but I want to get a master's. PhD program is, I'm going to suspend other stuff and get funded to come here and be a student again for 4 years. So if you're interested in the PhD program, Matt can connect you with a lot of that information. I'm happy to talk to you about it, especially if you've got a STEM degree from us already. That makes us very happy. So yeah, that's also an option. It's a very different option, but it's also an option.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right. So I'm assuming that this is as a residency requirement that there's going to be a teaching component.
For the
The
PhD
PhD.
program,
Yeah.
it's a residential program. So for at least 2 to 4 years here, full-time student doing research. The goal is that, this is for someone who wants to go off and advance the body of knowledge, either
Hmm.
as a corporate scientist or maybe in academia. We are gonna probably it's new, so we're still working out some of the
Right.
logistics here. We will actually require some, at least, teaching assistantship as part of it, because you get paid to be here. So
Hmm.
some of that pay will come from being a teaching assistant for another professor, and maybe teaching a course. That's still I think that's going to happen, but that's not set in stone yet.
Okay.
So yeah, but I went to a program when I got my PhD. I went to a program where like you have to go to a research institution, it was sort of thing we're a lot more open to because we're a lot more practical of a school. We understand that corporations hire PhDs too. And so if you want to be a corporate scientist, all the more power, right? That's fine.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions from the other people that are here with us? So I'm just curious if you don't mind, and you can just type it in the chat if privately to me if you want, or type it in the chat or not answer at all. But I'm just curious if you're particularly interested more in something that would be online versus if we had an in-person version, would that be more or less appealing to you or about the same?
Personally, online for me.
Okay. Are you local, by the way? You said you're
Yes, I'm local to Rochester. I live in Rochester.
okay. Not getting a lot of feedback from you. That's okay. No, not putting anyone on the spot. I just kind of curious. Okay, well, I have nothing else. I don't know, Matt, if you have more to get out of
No,
this or do.
yeah, no, I think we're all set. So in terms of next steps, Rich mentioned those on the slide there. Definitely feel free to reach out if you want to meet one-on-one, discuss things further. Obviously, all of you are coming in with different backgrounds, goals, career experience, all that good stuff. So happy to discuss things further. And we can schedule times to connect and hash things out. But yeah, those are the big things I think we have. Certainly appreciate your time and for you jumping on. But yeah, that's all we have on our end.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming, and look for applications. And if any of you want to talk more about the PhD program and option, please feel free to reach out. Like I said, my name is Rich DiGiordi. You can see it on the things there. It's a very uncommon last name, so if you search RIT for it, there's only me, so you won't have to worry about remembering. So, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Good night.
Simon. Have a good evening.
You too.
Bye everyone.